Our male protagonist, Lyle, has loved games since childhood, spending much of his time in the hospital. Gaming became a natural escape and quickly became a major part of his life. However, it's inevitable that doing the same thing for too long leads to burnout. One day, the thrill of gaming simply wasn't the same as it used to be. No matter the genre, the problem was that each new release felt like complete trash year after year. The story and world building were all similar and stereotypical. There was no depth to the system. This made Lyle ponder if there is any original game out there. That is when he discovered the game Dungeon & Stone. Curious, he clicked on it. Its genre was an RPG indie game with 2D pixel graphics that were hard to come by these days. It didn't look like the type of game Lyle would play, and it was only in English. However, since it was free, he decided to try it out. He was impressed that there were a lot of types of classes to choose from. Assuming he won't be playing much, he opts to select any of the characters. It's been a while since he has played a vertical scrolling game anyway. To his surprise, he became obsessed with the game as time passed by. It was then that he realized how fun the game was. Dungeon & Stone had several charms that could either be considered unique or absolutely trash. First, an NPC teammate is required in the gameplay. But if you die, you must start over. At first, it was enjoyable. But soon, he became too stubborn, fixated on beating the game. It was such a poorly made game that there weren't any tutorials, neither in Korean nor English. Despite that, Lyle was determined to conquer it, no matter how long it took. From starting the game during his hospital stay, through his time as a public service worker, to being discharged, returning to university, graduating, attending interviews, getting hired, and even while commuting to work, Lyle never stopped playing Dungeon & Stone. However, he has not once succeeded in winning the game. 9 years passed by, and Lyle finally reached the final boss room, also known as the Gate of the Abyss. In a drunken state, he curses and cheers at his feet. He cries happy tears about how he has sacrificed his 20 seconds for this moment. A message window pops up confirming if he wants to enter the boss's room, as he might never come back. Though he found the warning ominous, he decided to proceed with it. While he waits for the level to download, Lyle wonders what kind of attributes and patterns it will have. The game tutorial finally finished loading, and to our protagonist's utter surprise, the game's system was now in Korean. He gets annoyed since he thought Dungeon & Stone only supported English. He had to work hard at understanding English for nearly a decade. As the user check completion window opens, sudden streams of blinding light pour into his room, engulfing him. And with pain that burned through his body, Lyle lost consciousness. When he reopened his eyes, Lyle found himself facing an unbelievable situation. Around him, he sees torches instead of LED lights, muscly barbarians wherever he looks, and some weird man giving a speech. As the weird man orders to pick a weapon, Lyle grows confused. Though it was a language he had never heard, he understood it well. He tries to calm down and understand the situation. Lyle checks out his body and is surprised to see how rough and muscly it is. This wasn't him. The chief continues giving a speech and calls out names of people to come forth and choose a weapon befitting them. The situation seems quite familiar to Lyle. It was young warriors picking their weapons and being acknowledged. It is then that he realizes this is Dungeon & Stone. When Lyle chose the barbarian as a character, this is how the game started. He gets cut off from his thoughts as a man next to him quivers in fear and mumbles how this is Dungeon & Stone. It seems Lyle is not the only one who has entered the game. The chief overhears him and charges towards the two. He asked who spoke. Finding the man who did, he slaughters him in front of Lyle's eyes. The chief then says Kadua's son, Orm, was possessed by an evil spirit. He orders everyone to ease what the evil spirit said from their memories and continues with the coming-of-age ceremony. Lyle begins to get the hang of the situation. People like him who come into the game are evil spirits. Secondly, you will die if anyone finds this out. Third, it could have been his head rolling on the ground. The conclusion is that he needs to get through this without being found out, but there is a slight problem. Lyle does not know his name. He mutters curses at the game system for not even informing him of his name. There was not even a stat window or anything. After a brief pause, he decides to act when his name is called. It could belong to some other evil spirit, but he will leave that for later. When the chief calls out Jandal's son, Carl, he counts to 2. When no one steps forward, Lyle takes a step up. The chief initially stares at him curiously, and then asks him to pick up his weapon. Lyle smirks. He had succeeded in identifying his identity. Carl is his name. Now he must make the second major decision. In return for having no talent for magic, barbarians have strong physical abilities. Lyle was going to raise his barbarian as a close combat dealer for starters. So, the weapon Lyle decides to choose is a shield. With this, Carl was announced a warrior. On the other hand, Lyle's computer window is still on. It indicates that the synchronization has been completed. His stat window opened, showing Carl's information. When Lyle first played the barbarian race, he chose to go with a great sword because it looked very cool. However, he died way too much. He wondered how to build the character so it could have more survivability. He tried on various weapons, including dual axes, large hammers, etc., but the play wasn't very stable since he was always barely surviving in all of his battles. One day he had this thought: does a barbarian have to be played as a dealer? Barbarians are a race with high vitality and strength. While it might not be as good of a tanker as a dwarf, it still possesses the base for a tanker. Lyle does not really like doing this since this combat method needs a lot of training. But he knows it would be a pity to waste all his research efforts so far, so he decided to give it a go. To his utter surprise, he ended up succeeding, and he cleared levels with less damage. Barbarians that have gone through the coming-of-age ceremony will enter the labyrinth. They will go to the city with the labyrinth. However, before they could arrive at the labyrinth, the leader kept misguiding the clan. The second leader, Einar, also made miscalculations, and everyone started blaming her. Lyle wondered if these losers were brainless. If this keeps going on, they might never really reach the labyrinth. Though Lyle did not want to attract attention, he knew he had to step up. He whispered about the way to the labyrinth to Einar. The others successfully followed her to the labyrinth. Lyle thought he was an expert when it came to dungeon and stone. That is how he produced this conclusion. If he combines the sturdy body of a barbarian and his game knowledge, he can survive. At least, that is what he thought back then. Based on the game designs, there are crystals stuck on the walls of level 1 of the labyrinth. Therefore, there is no real need for torches. But the area Lyle is currently in seems like a region of darkness. It is the place that is on the furthest outskirts of Labyrinth Level 1, the super rare area that does not have light. For now, Lyle calls out his status window to open, but to no avail. The same is the case with character information and daily logs. He knew he was screwed. He decides to venture in a direction first, but suddenly finds himself caught in a goblin trap. Lyle lets out a piercing scream as pain shoots through his injured foot. He struggles to endure the agony, determined not to make a sound. He knows the goblin who set the trap is likely lurking nearby. If it hears him scream, it might spot him caught in its snare. The goblin will wait for Lyle to weaken in the darkness, so he must stay silent. Aware of the paralyzing poison in the trap, he quickly tries to free his foot. His right foot has already gone numb, and in frustration, he curses at the hidden goblin, demanding it to show itself. When he receives no response, Lyle wonders if it could all be his own delusion and if there really isn't a goblin. But even if he is just acting like an idiot here, he is determined to be an idiot who survives. He knew the situation was dangerous, and his bleeding would not stop anytime soon. It feels like his brain has been dipped in alcohol. He suddenly hears footsteps moving behind him. Even though he knew the goblin was there, it was still problematic as he could not see it. He decides to increase his speed of running over. As he runs, he observes how the goblin is following him while maintaining a certain distance. When he stops, it stops as well. It is rejoicing as its prey is bleeding away in time. Lyle is sure it is probably waiting for him to slowly die. He decides to change plans. He acts as if he has collapsed and waits for the goblin to come closer. Lyle becomes irksome as he watches the goblin throw rocks at him to confirm whether he is dead or not. But he is also impressed by its smartness. Goblins are more intelligent than barbarians. Assured that the barbarian is unconscious, the goblin approaches him. At that moment, Lyle gets up and charges at the goblin. As he fights with it, Lyle is surprised at how Carl's body is moving itself. Carl's body is different from his own sick body that spent its whole life in the hospital. This is the body of a barbarian. He ends up defeating the goblin and gaining EXP points. To his surprise, the goblin's body disappears as it dies, just as in the game. In exchange, the dungeon and stone game's currency was in its place. After observing it, Lyle deduces it is a grade 9 magic crystal, and the value is a piece of bread. He scoffs in frustration after realizing this is what he got for going through all that rubbish. Lyle is aware that this is a world where labyrinths and monsters exist. Dead monsters would leave items behind and disappear, and in the city that is outside, there are familiar games, scenery, and other races that live together. This is the world within the game he knows of. However, he will never confuse his reality by thinking it is just a game. That is for sure. As Lyle makes his way through the region, he continues getting game alerts of his bleeding. Huffing and panting, he manages to drag himself through the area. He thinks about what happened to the man whom he met at the ceremony. Did he die or awaken in his original body? Lyle thinks he understands why humans have religions. As he continues to write his stream of consciousness through feeling, the game continues alerting his character to how he is still bleeding. He then finally receives a warning that there is less than 5% remaining of Carl's vitality. If he does not receive treatment soon, his character may die. Lyle thinks of how religions provide a distraction in a moment of despair, just like him in this situation. Lyle continues to drag himself through the floor. He finally sees it getting brighter by the end of the corridor. He is sure there is bound to be one or two people who can help him. However, Lyle kept seeing illusions. His version of the barbarian looked down on him and challenged him. His identity keeps splitting into joining back again and getting dull again. He is sure he is going to go insane from losing too much blood. However, he is determined to survive no matter what. Just when there is less than 4% remaining of Carl's vitality, he finds a group of adventurers. They all began to inspect the bleeding man. They are surprised that a novice got here faster than them. Lyle could not even speak to them and just stared at them, hoping they would help him. One of the adventurers turned towards Priestess Ursina, asking if she could treat the man. Lyle's sure if they have a priestess, they must be high level. However, the priestess blatantly refuses to help him. Instead, they pour a potion onto Lyle's injured foot. The man warns Lyle that it may hurt as it does not have divine powers. Lyle did not care, as he just wanted to survive. But when the liquid was poured onto his injury, he screamed in agony. Though his vitality quickly improved, it felt like his entire body was melting. He finally got to know this was the reason they did not allow you to use the potion mid-battle. With time, Lyle got better, and the numbness disappeared. He is then questioned by the leader of the adventurers about how a novice managed to get here before them. He suggests purchasing the information, as he knows of a secret passage. After Lyle's near-death experience, he kept running into goblins. Though he was nervous at first, since he got his vision back, goblins were no threat to him. The traps were randomly placed on the ground. Their ambush was too predictable, and their hiding places were too obvious. The only problem was that Lyle was getting hungry. He is quite sure that the chief gave him some food. However, when he checks, his ration bag is half empty, as he had crawled on the ground during his injury. Out of the 7 days worth of rations, 5 were gone. He guesses he will just have to eat as little as possible. Even the crusty, dehydrated bread seemed delicious then. He was also getting thirsty and wondered where to find water. In Dungeon and Stone, there is a hunger system. It only activates in the labyrinth, and Lyle never needed to carry water around since he just needed to eat. But this is not a game. It was already such a difficult game, but since it became his reality, the difficulty was out of this world. This is just another word that happens to be similar to a game that Lyle knows. Since the chief did not give him water, he is certain there is a supply of water in the labyrinth somewhere. As he follows the sound of water, he comes across a man. Aside from that blonde adventurer's party, this was his first encounter, but there was no conversation. It is as if there is an unspoken rule not to interact with the other adventurers unless necessary. Lyle sits on the ground and begins to count the crystals he has gathered by defeating the goblins. There are 44 in total. Well, Lyle thinks back on how he was dying. It is an impressive situation, but there is another problem. He was exhausted and sleepy. There are 2 ways in which you can sleep in the labyrinth. First, you leave your life in the hands of God and sleep. Second, you find allies to protect each other. When Lyle tried to approach a few men, they all fled away, saying they already had all the necessary members for their party. He kept trying to approach people, but either they were not keen on allying with barbarians or scared of him. In the end, he was rejected by all of them. However, one man dared to approach him. The 2 agreed to become overnight companions. The man introduced himself as Hans. As they exchange greetings, Lyle becomes suspicious of the man's intentions. His manner of speaking seemed strange to him. However, he agreed to proceed nonetheless. Hans suggests doing rock, paper, and scissors to decide who sleeps first. He ended up winning and began to sleep first. He hands Lyle a watch, telling him to wake him up when the shorthand reaches a point. Lyle guesses the man thinks barbarians do not know how to read that. Lyle watches the man sleep comfortably. He wonders if the man would lend him his sleeping bag if he asked for it. He continued staring at the stopwatch, hoping it would hurry up. When Hans' time is up, Lyle wakes him up. Hans thanks him, saying he will wake Lyle up in 2 hours. However, Lyle did not think he could trust someone he just met. He pretends to snore like a savage. He wanted Hans to show his true colors. In the end, he remained awake for 2 hours, but Hans did nothing. He regrets not sleeping, but he would not let his guard down so easily around the stranger and could not sleep until he decides Hans is trustworthy. During Hans' turn to sleep, Lyle drifts off to sleep. Hans wakes him up, suggesting he rest a bit longer. This got Lyle to think. Hans seemed kind and was the first to speak to Lyle, understanding his tough situation and not blaming him for dozing off. He even declined any form of compensation for the mix-up. In the world of Dungeon and Stone that Lyle knows, there is no one quite this nice. Lyle is roused by a noise, and when he opens his eyes, he sees Hans standing over him, weapon in hand. Lyle dodges the attack, his eyes raged with fury. The man tries to make up an excuse, but this only agitates Lyle even more as he wonders if he thinks barbarians are really that stupid. He ruthlessly hits humans. However, he did not die with one hit, unlike the goblins. He continues striking, ignoring Hans' pleas. Lyle coldly questions why he did it. Hans finally confesses he wanted his magic crystals and was just going to knock him out. He was also going to take his shield, as barbarian equipment is said to be of high quality and sold for a decent price. However, Lyle knew he was still hiding something. Lyle is aware that it is considered a serious crime to kill another adventurer in Dungeon and Stone. So, there must be another reason. Being beaten to blue, Hans finally reveals that he wanted Lyle's heart, as barbarian hearts are being sold at a steep price. He heard they were being used as ingredients for a new spell. Lyle finally gets it. To Hans, Carl was merely like a goblin, tough to catch but precious enough to yield a big reward. He then asked Hans what the reason was for doing this now instead of when he fell asleep for the first time. Hans reveals it is because he wanted to sleep too. He asks if Lyle will forgive him now he has told him everything. Lyle takes a deep pause and smirks. He asked if he really thinks he is going to forgive every person that does this to him. Hans begs and pleads but to no avail. Only one day after entering this game world, Lyle killed a man. Soon a message window pops up. It shows how Lyle's character, Carl, has achieved another accomplishment, his first murder, and the reward he got is a +1 on his mental statistics. With his points, Lyle equips a backpack, a shoulder pad, a hammer, and leather boots. 2 days passed by. Lyle graduated from living like a savage. He drank water from his bottle when he became thirsty. He used his compass when he wanted to know which direction he should go, looked at the pocket watch when he wanted to know the time, and was able to treat injuries with bandages and portions. He found his situation ironic. Only when he killed a man was he able to start living like a man. With time, his combat index and abilities increased. As he fought goblins, he felt like he was in somebody else's body and wondered if it was because originally it was Carl's body. He observes how goblins have started appearing in pairs. His battle stats have gone up thanks to his new weapon, and his progress is going smoothly. However, since he has been battling goblins non-stop since encountering humans, it is a given that he is exhausted. He knew he needed to sleep, or he would not last much longer. He may not have an overnight companion, but he thinks it might be better off without one. But as soon as he started to doze off by himself, other goblins decided to show, enraging him. He begins to fight them in frustration, as it hadn't been even 10 minutes. After killing them all, he hopes for them to stop appearing and let him sleep just a little. When Lyle opens his eyes again, he realizes his body has been attacked by a goblin in sleep. What shocked him the most was that he didn't sense the attack at all. Furious, Lyle curses aloud and kicks the goblin away from him. The goblin flees, and Lyle does not even have the energy to chase him. He knew he needed to rest properly, as he could not even sense the goblin's attacks now. He healed his wound with the potion and continued his journey. As 14 hours passed by, Lyle was sure people must have started looking for overnight companions. But he cannot trust anyone now that he knows how valuable barbarian hearts are. But if it is a fellow barbarian, he knows he can trust them. Therefore, he decides he begins to look for a barbarian. On his way, he sees many humans approaching him. Unlike yesterday, they all wanted him. But Lyle blatantly refused, saying he was looking for a fellow barbarian. He realized that yesterday he was covered in blood with only one shoe, so he must have looked terrible to have as an overnight companion. One of the humans says that it is going to be tough to find another barbarian. It is because they would have ascended within 2 to 3 months as soon as they had their coming-of-age ceremony. So, there are probably less than 100 on the first floor. Lyle remains quiet. He knows with a large build it must be laughable for him to be struggling on the first floor. He decides to be realistic. It does not matter if it is a barbarian. He just needs to find an overnight companion if it's not a human. It must be another species. Though there may be less than humans, he is sure there are more than barbarians. Some elves keep their promises, and dwarves are spirited like barbarians. But it does not matter if they are in other species. Since most other species have special traits unlike humans, they would not harm other adventurers being blinded by chump change like humans. After making such a decision and roaming the cave for about an hour, Lyle found an isolated and injured elf. The elf becomes highly alert as she sees Carl's sturdy figure approaching her. Lyle asks if she is alone, to which the elf immediately picks up her bow. Lyle notices how she is injured on her stomach, and it does not seem it is a wound caused by the goblin dagger. He questions if she was hurt by a human. After inspecting Lyle for a moment, she goes down on her knees and begs him for help. This immediately confuses him. With tears in her eyes, the elf begs him to let her go just this once, as she has a little brother to take care of at home. Lyle remains dumbfounded, wondering what kind of elf has no backbone. Most of the elves in the game are too cold, and judging by her appearance, he thought she would be too. If he knew her personality, he would have approached her differently. He decides to first get rid of the misunderstanding by smiling at her. Smiles, assuring her he has no intention of killing her, but his smile itself scared the wits out of the elf. She quivers in fear, asking if he really has to do with this. Lyle suggests she treat her wounds first, and they will talk later. He hands her licho leaves and bandages. The elf expectantly looks at Lyle and asks why he is giving these to her. Lyle questions if there must be a reason to help someone. He could not tell her just now that he in fact did have a reason. He wanted to become overnight companions with this elf. He promises to stand guard while she treats her wound. He inspects the elf, injured, fatigued, and with a beautiful appearance. She is in a much worse situation than he is. After the elf is done treating her wounds, they get down to introductions. Lyle introduces himself as Kyle, and the woman introduces herself as Eva. Lyle then questions why she is so afraid of him, and Eva reveals it is because she is an elf. He's a barbarian. This confuses Lyle, and he wonders what that has to do with anything. Eva discloses how barbarians and elves are hostile towards each other. This makes him remember the game story, but this is the first time he has heard about their hostile relations. He thought they had good relations in the game before. Eva says the war ended 10 years ago already, so she harbors no ill will towards barbarians. Therefore, she doesn't want to fight him. Lyle also assures that he does not harbor ill will either, so he suggests they become overnight companions. Eva wonders about this deal for a moment. She had heard that barbarians consider their warrior's honor to be of utmost importance. Though Lyle did not care about the warrior's honor, he agreed. He also asks Eva to call him Carl instead of Mr. Eva swears upon the name of her tribe while Lyle promises his warrior's honor, mutually vowing not to harm the other party during this night. Lyle suggests that he should sleep first. He gives Eva a pocket watch and lays down. He huffs, deciding to test Eva by pretending to sleep. However, he ends up dozing off. Eva wakes him up after 2 hours. He hands her the blanket and backpack he got from Hans and exchange places. Eva hands him and falls asleep as soon as her head hits the ground. Meanwhile, Lyle begins to ponder what happened to him in real life. He thinks he has not been reported missing yet, as no one would even come to visit him. Even if he were to go back, there is nothing there for him. If he thinks about it that way, he is sure his willpower is going to break. After a few more turns of standing guard, it was time to get going. As Lyle watches Eva sleep, he contemplates the possibility of them being allies in battle. But if they became allies, he would have to split rewards with her so his share would decrease. Though the goblins have been appearing in swarms in the last 3 days ago, he can easily defeat 3 to 4 of them by himself. He gets cut off from his thoughts as he sees 2 humans approaching them. As they see the elves, they ask Lyle what his relationship is with the elf. They find their overnight companionship fascinating. But when Lyle shuns them, they walk away. But he gets a bad feeling as they are looking for Eva. He tries to wake her up but fails. After trying to wake her up a little more, Lyle is sure she is pretending to be asleep. Plus, the blanket that was loose earlier is now covering her face. He immediately forces her to sit up and asks why she is pretending to be asleep. Eva tearfully confesses he might desert her if she gets up. Lyle frowns. He and Eva are temporary overnight companions, a relationship maintained by standing guard while the other person sleeps for 1 night. And as soon as she opened her eyes, their oath ended. Lyle questions Eva about the 2 humans. Eva guesses that they are probably from the same clan as the human who tried to hurt her, as the symbol on their garments was the same, called the Crystal Union. Hearing that it is an entire group, Lyle deduces the situation is worse than he expected. He decides to quickly part ways with the elf and get going. But he remembers how the elf is 20 years old, the same age as his character Carl. He sighs deeply and suggests Eva talk while they are moving. He says he will hear her story before deciding to help her. Eva's face lit up, and she agreed. Eva reveals how she met them on her first day inside the labyrinth. As an overnight companion, she sensed something strange, so she opened her eyes while she was asleep. She only found out later, but the human was the manager of a clan, who does their major business on the first floor. She managed to escape somehow, but the people from his union kept attacking her. That is when she got injured. Upon asking how Eva guesses they must have used massage stones to keep pursuing them. Lyle did not know they existed in the game he played. He asks for more details, and Eva reveals how message stones are mystic devices that allow you to communicate when you synchronize them before usage. Lyle infers that it is their equivalent of walkie-talkies, nowhere to run, lots of manpower, and mystic devices that allow one to communicate. Lyle is sure if he leaves Eva, she will be caught by them. Lyle questions why the members of the Union are continuing to chase her. Eva turns quiet for a moment and then confesses how she flung her knife around when she was escaping the first time, and it happened to hit him somewhere bad. Hearing this stunned Lyle, Eva chuckled and revealed how she heard it was completely severed, and he could not even attach it back with potions. Seeing her laugh makes Lyle even more dumbfounded. That is more than enough of a reason to chase her. Suddenly, Eva's eyes widened in surprise, and she revealed that there was someone following them. She warns Lyle not to look behind him. She estimates the distance between them is about 150 meters. Lyle knew it was a distance that was far enough not to sense anything, but it didn't seem like she was lying, and he wondered if this was the ability elves are born with. He suggests just increasing their speed for now, and Eva agrees. Lyle notices how her wound has reopened, yet she is not complaining about it at all. It seems she has guts. Even though they increased their speed, the distance wasn't increasing. In the meantime, Lyle is certain the chaser must be informing his comrades of their location. In the end, they had no choice but to eliminate the chaser. If Lyle were their target line, that is what he would have decided. But if they kill that chaser, they cannot take it back, so he must think carefully. If he is going to make a sound decision, he knows he needs more detailed information. He asks Eva about what she is good at, to which she confidently reveals how good she is at laundry and cleaning. Perplexed, Lyle specifies that he means during battle. Eva reveals how good she is at archery and can use spirit magic to summon flames. Lyle could tell she is a perfect example of an elf archer, and if it is the flame magic, it is the rarest element. He then asks if she has killed anyone before. The question takes Eva aback, and she hesitantly denies it. However, she confidently says she can do it. Following that answer, Lyle offers her to become his comrade until they get out of the labyrinth, and Eva swiftly agrees. As the distance between them and the chaser closes, they veer off. Lyle asks Eva to summon the spirit. As the perpetrator gets closer, he whispers to her to shoot at them. Eva successfully does so, eliminating the preparator. Lyle then got closer to the man and inspected him. The man indeed had a messenger stone on him. A voice was talking about how one of their messengers was in pursuit of the elf and the barbarian but was now out of contact. The voice then orders everyone to gather in the Goblin District. All Lyle retrieved from the preparator was a hefty pouch of magic crystals, 2 daggers, 1 potion, water from his waist belt, and the clothes he was wearing. Eva changed into the man's clothes as Lyle suggested they would be much better than the ones she was wearing before. He notices how her aura has changed in a good way. Lyle questions Eva about how one uses the message stone. Eva guesses there must be something you can press on its side. Lyle does as told, and the voice speaks yet again. The man they just eliminated was named Certain. The clan now knows that the elf is with a barbarian who has got a hammer. Hearing that the bounty on her head is about 10,000 gold, Eva trembles in fear. Lyle tells her not to worry and to summon the spirit as they are going to travel along the outskirts. As he reveals how they are going to the 2nd floor, Eva turns shocked. She reminds him how the 1st and 2nd floors are very different. Lyle says he is aware, and they will be alright if they stay near the entrance. As he remarks how they are a good match, Eva blushes. A melee tanker and a long ranger dealer have always been a good match. Lyle knew that very well. Plus, if he's going to form a party with Eva, the first 4 aren't going to yield a good margin for them. The voice from the message stone speaks up again about the terrible things it might do to Eva. Hearing them, Eva turns scared and agrees to follow Lyle to the 2nd floor. Lyle guesses it was good timing, as he doesn't need to convince her anymore. He always liked helping those in need when it was beneficial to him, of course. It is the best of both worlds. Eva asks if he even knows how to get to the 2nd floor. Lyle says he doesn't know the exact path, but if they keep heading north, they will get there eventually. The dungeon is designed in such a way that if you keep following the darkness, you will reach a portal. It is because the darkness represents a path that leads you to the upper floors. Eva abruptly asks Lyle to halt as there is a goblin trap in front of them. Lyle's eyes widen as he wonders if there is a possibility that goblins do not appear frequently in the light. He scoffs at how unlucky he was. Eva assures him she can handle it. Lyle warns her not to use the spirit, as she needs to save her strength for later. This makes Eva stop in her tracks, as she was planning to do just that. Suddenly, goblins charge over her. She avoids their dodge and throws her arrow at them, killing them mercilessly. She was more skilled than Lyle had thought. Eva happily handed over to him more than half of the magic crystals. The messenger stone's voice again speaks up, informing them how they have raised the bounty of the elf to 20,000 gold. Dead or alive. Lyle tells Eva not to worry, as there is no one who will search in the dark for them. Plus, the scumbags do not seem like they have the best teamwork. However, he did find it suspicious that things were going too well. Judging by the timing, something bad should happen soon, according to Lyle's bad luck. Just then, the two spot ghouls nearby. On the first floor, there are different monster appearances based on the direction one goes. The ghouls are supposed to appear in the south. This makes Lyle wonder if they roamed too far and got to the border. Lyle suggests to Eva that they should fight together. The experience awarding system for Dungeon and Stone is very straight. One is only awarded for the first time when they defeat a monster of the same species. It means they need to defeat as many species as possible to level up. Therefore, Lyle finds this to be a great situation. He suggests taking the lead and Eva taking care of the ones at the very back. If this is like the game, the ghouls should not attack until they are within a certain range. As he steps forward, the ghouls immediately charge at him. Thankfully, this is going just as Lyle expected. He begins to eliminate all the ghouls within range. He is aware that they are stronger and faster than goblins, but they are still rank 9 monsters, so their patterns are simple. And with a trusty comrade, this is a piece of cake. After defeating the ghouls, they kept walking toward the north until they eventually reached their third day. They find blood on the floor, and Eva begins to inspect it. She deduces that it is not from the goblins and wonders whose blood it is. Plus, there was a piece of bread beside it. Lyle freezes in place. He hopes to be wrong as he sees the blood trail, the goblin trap, and one of his shoes on the floor. He frowns as he realizes this is the first location he stepped foot in once he got to the labyrinth. Behind it was precisely where the portal was. Realizing the portal was less than 10 meters away from his starting point angers Lyle. He begins to punch everything in sight. If only he had gone in the other direction, he would have escaped, making him wonder just how bad luck he had. Eva begins to tear up, thinking he is mad because of her. Lyle assures her it is not because of her. Eva thinks he must have lost his precious comrade here and assures him they must have gone to heaven. Lyle lets her be and suggests moving to the second floor. Soon enough, they arrived on the second floor, the Goblin Forest. They reach the forest after falling through the portal. Lyle feels like he was chewed up by a frog in a well, and then spat out. Eva excitedly expresses how surprised she was, as she has never teleported through a portal like she was falling before. Lyle feels envious of her agility, as he does not have it. He decides to scope out the area first. He does not sense any living being within a 15-meter radius. Thanks to the sky stars, he can see well. However, it will not get brighter even if time passes, since this is inside the labyrinth. Eva remarks how she had never heard about the second floor being a forest. Lyle says they were probably referring to the other second floor. There are 4 portals on the first floor, and each one leads to a different region. In the north, there is the Goblin Forest. East is where lies the Beast's Lair, and west is the Land of the Dead, while the south is where the dark Rocky Mountains exist. Eva raises her hand knowingly and says wherever you go, it will all lead to the third floor. Lyle questions if she knows the way back to the city from the labyrinth. Eva says they go back automatically once the labyrinth closes. It is 168 hours for the first floor and 40 hours for the second floor. Once the time runs out, the labyrinth spits the explorers back out into the city. Lyle says the Crystal Union will not come up here since they cannot even work well together, so they should stay on the second floor before the 168 hours are up. Then they will go back down to the first floor, but he suggests exploring the place and asks Eva to take the lead. Eva begins leading the way, warning that there are traps ahead. Lyle becomes confused and says he doesn't see anything. Eva points out how they are underneath all the leaves. She throws a rock at one of them, shocking him. He wonders if this is the detection ability of elves. Suddenly she seemed very dependable to her, but he does not find the need to praise her. He tells her not to get excited over something as small as that, as she is already a proper explorer. This makes Eva blush, and she chuckles. She could not help but feel delighted by the title of proper explorer. Eva points out that something seems off as there are traps, but she does not sense any goblins in the area. Lyle knew she was right. Unlike the first floor, having traps in the area does not mean that there will also be goblins. The second floor traps are more like a terrain feature than anything. They pushed the thought aside and continued making their way forward. In the original game, another trait of the second floor is that the goblins go around in groups of about a dozen, sometimes with mutant goblins who are warriors or archers. There are more mutants the farther you go towards the exterior of the forest, and high-ranking monsters too. But it should not matter since Eva and Lyle plan to stay close to the portal. Like suggests getting rid of all the traps in the surrounding area, and beginning to widen their area of search. But if they get into a dangerous situation, he suggests running immediately to the first floor, and so they widen their area by removing traps using rocks while Lyle continued to praise Eva as a proper explorer. Suddenly, Eva senses a group of goblins nearby. She informs Lyle that they have not spotted them yet. Lyle suggests fighting and asks Eva how close they can get without being noticed. Eva estimates that she can get to about 30 meters away from them. They discreetly make their way close to the goblins. Lyle observes how Eva does not make any sound despite walking through all the grass. He guesses that is what an elf is like. After spotting the group of goblins, Eva signals Lyle and shoots her arrow at them. As the goblins charge at them, Lyle notices how the second floor is different. There are 3 times the number of goblins one would usually come across on the first floor. It is rather intimidating, even if they are goblins. Plus, there is a goblin warrior. But surprisingly enough, Lyle does not feel scared at all. Rather, the warrior's heart he possesses makes him determined to spar. With Eva, Lyle continues defeating the dozens of goblins that charge at him. After defeating the group of goblins, Lyle earned 11 magic crystals. Considering that it took him an entire day to earn 44 on the first floor, this was a satisfying reward to him. He wishes he could take the warrior's weapon or armor, but they disappeared with the goblin. He gives 2 of the crystals to Eva. They then make their way forth, with Lyle looking forward to seeing how much he can get by the end of the 4 days. Once Lyle and Eva started going farther out than a 3-kilometer radius, they began coming across goblin groups every 5 minutes. They were of various kinds, including archers and warriors. Unfortunately, the archers had stealthy magic abilities, but Lyle does not think they will lose. With this body, he only needs to concentrate to dodge arrows flying towards him. In the end, he successfully defeats Goblin Archer. They finally stop taking a break after hunting non-stop for 15 hours. While Eva quickly falls asleep, Lyle begins to ponder. They have earned more rewards than they could have ever imagined if they were on the first floor. However, they have started to come across other explorers since they are going farther out. They were all groups of 3 or more, and sometimes they even had other world species. They just passed by each other every time, but it drained Lyle's energy to even see them. Explorers seem scarier to him than the goblins, especially now he has a reason to be worried. He looks at Eva, commenting that it is a problem that she is so pretty. Hearing this, Eva's ears perk up, and she wakes up. She looks at him and playfully asks if she is that pretty. Lyle suggests she fall back asleep. Lyon found her joyful nature odd, as all the other fairies he knew were not like this. 3 more days passed by, and soon the 7th day arrived. It is finally time for Eva and Lyle to leave the labyrinth. They had 2 hours and 47 minutes remaining until the first floor would close. After all those fights, Lyle became a master at scuffles. Plus, he thinks Eva's getting used to it too, as she knows exactly whom to shoot when necessary. The time it takes to kill all the goblins has shortened as well. As one of the archer goblins they eliminated was about to disappear, Eva points to the essence in its place. Lyle knew essence was part of the skill system of the game Dungeon and Stone. It gives a passive and active skill, each with varying starts depending on the type. You can only take 1 per level, but it is basically a cheat key. Therefore, it is considered more valuable than treasure to an explorer. But there is a limit to how many you can absorb, and the ability of the essence varies. Therefore, the character's fate depends on which essences are taken. Since the drop rate is near 0, Lyle never would have expected to see it here. Its existence seemed too lucky to Lyle, so he didn't get a good feeling about it. Eva offers to take the essence if Lyle doesn't want it. Lyle agreed, already knowing what essence he wanted. Suddenly, a group of humans approached them, wanting to take the essence. Before they can do something, Lyle pushes Eva towards the essence, letting her consume it. This makes the humans hesitate to charge at the 2 of them. When they turned, Lyle and Eva began to run away in the opposite direction towards the first floor portal. However, when Eva senses a group of goblins, Lyle suggests moving to the opposite side for now. However, an arrow almost attacks them. This makes Lyle realize it is the guys using the goblins to tire them out, and so they have no choice but to fight using Eva's essence powers. Every essence has its own special ability. Whatever Eva consumed earlier was a goblin archer. As he says that, Eva's power activates. It seems it works just by will instead of needing to say anything to trigger it. Lyle says he will get rid of the goblins on his own. while Eva must look for the guy with the crossbow meanwhile. He tells her to stay hidden, and when he sends a signal, she must shoot the guy with a crossbow. Until then, she must not do anything. Lyle begins to fight the dozens of goblins. His injuries kept piling up as he fought alone. As he continued to hold his fort, the guys from earlier approached him. They promised to let him go if he told them where the elf was. Lyle smirks, wondering if he really thinks he is that stupid. Hearing him laugh, they began to charge at him. Lyle's left arm was still not moving from the injury, making him wonder if Eva found the crossbow archer. He knows he needs to send a unique signal now to let Eva recognize it. That he does, confusing the group of men. After the signal, Lyle charges at the men with his shield, hoping to distract them to make an opening for Eva. Eva soon arrives, and they finally defeat the men. Eva fusses over Lyle's injuries and gives him the healing potion for his injuries. There were 40 minutes remaining until the first floor closed, so Lyle knew they didn't have any time to rest. They hurriedly took the guy's belongings and made their way to the portal before it closed. Before the labyrinth closes and transports them back to their original places, Lyle tells Eva to meet him at the Black Whale Tavern. Lyle gets transported back to Rafdonia. It's a given since all the explorers are gathering in one place, but there is a tremendous amount of people. Time in the labyrinth flows differently than in the city. No matter how many days you spell labyrinth, once you return to the city, it is always known the next day, and you must reset your clock to point to noon. All the barbarians reunited and cheered at their victory. They all had their magic stones counted. Lyle also had his calculated, and to every barbarian's utter astonishment, Lyle had 180,000 stones in total. They all cheered for their fellow, Jandal's son, Carl, as it was the highest record of all time. They all point towards his axe and bag, envying him and declaring him as the best warrior. Lyle could understand why their reactions were so passionate. Of course, he'd be the first ever barbarian to go into the labyrinth without anything and come back as a civilized man. He proudly raises his axe, calling himself the best warrior, while the others cheer Carl's name. Later, when Lyle waits for all the barbarians to line up, he spots Eva in the crowd. She was talking to her fellow elves. He felt envious of her, as he only had savages by him. Eva also notices him and waves. Lyle whispers for her to meet him tonight, and she agrees. His barbarian friend spots him communicating with the elf and asks if he knows her. Lyle denies. The barbarian yells that there is no way the best warrior like him would be on familiar terms with those cowardly earheads. Tension filled the air. Lyle knew he would go crazy because the barbarians never gave a care in the world. Soon the other barbarians joined them, and Lyle suggested getting going. He knew it would be impossible to talk to Eva in this kind of atmosphere, and decided to talk to her later tonight. Lyle suddenly sees one of the men reunited with his son. He also watches other families and remembers how the game had some similar scenarios as well. It was the joy and happiness of families and friends reuniting while other families were filled with agony and sadness. Lyle has played Dungeon and Stone many times, but coming across these faces in real life instead of through 2D graphics felt quite weird. Lyle followed the barbarians to a bar to celebrate. The reason he is with these barbarians is because he thought he might miss a necessary step in the process or something. But to his annoyance, they are just pouring alcohol down their throats, wasting his time. As he tries to excuse himself, the barbarians grow rough, saying he is today's protagonist. But they rejoiced and wished him the best of luck. Lyle made his way to the peaceful streets where there were no monsters or humans that would harm him. This place has laws and rules and a feeling of relaxation. Even if he were to fall on the ground here, he would be able to get up like nothing happened. Someone might even lend him a hand before he can. This place might be another world and much more barbaric than 21st century Earth. But despite that, it is peaceful. He thinks living in the city might not be too bad after all. But after taking an intense shower and falling to the bed, he misses home, even if there is not anyone to greet him there. After sleeping plenty, Lyle decides to get going to the Black Whale Tavern to meet Eva. When he asks around about the place, an old man reveals how the tavern disappeared 10 years ago. Though Lyle expected it, he is surprised to know the world in the game must be years behind this one. He asks for the place's new name and learns it is Python Puff. As Lyle reaches the location, he notices how the place looks different than in the game. He decides to go to a library or someplace similar sometime later. He finally supports Eva amongst the crowd with a woman from earlier. The woman seemed to disapprove of the barbarian. Lyle and the woman exchange greetings, and he learns that she is Eva's older sister, Taricha. She icily questions Lyle why he has asked to see such a young girl so late at night in a tavern like this after standing her up last night. This confuses Lyle, and he questions Eva how long it has been since they left the labyrinth. When she reveals 30 hours, Lyle turns confused. No wonder he felt so refreshed when he woke up. It was because he slept over a day. With this, the video ends. What happens to Lyle's real-world self while he's inside the game? Is he still in control? Or is someone else pulling the strings? Is the game dungeon in stone hiding a deeper, darker secret? Will Eva and Lyle remain partners for future quests as well? Stay tuned for more updates.
On April 1st, 2020, Mojang releases a version of Minecraft unlike any other. Contained within is a virtually infinite number of dimensions. By throwing a book into a nether portal, it creates a link to a new world based on the text. There's a huge variety of possibilities, places of order, chaos, beauty, ugliness, simplicity, and complexity. It is easy to get immersed in the boundless spaces, the realm of unlimited possibilities. However, the 20W14 Infinite update has another side to it, one that's not immediate.